Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast, partnered with Heavy Duty Fight Management. I'm your host as always, Newsome, and unfortunately this week your co-host John couldn't be with us. Fear not though, as I've drafted in a cracking guest host for you guys, a voice that most of you will recognise, so I'd like to welcome on his Newsome MMA podcast debut, Mr. Suntszu, also known as Joe. Joe, thank you for the short notice appearance. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
I am doing great. As we discussed offline, I had a long extended bachelor party in Las Vegas, which I am just recovering from. I am back at work though, and I was happy to get the call. You've certainly been kind enough to appear on several of my podcasts across the pond, so I am more than happy and willing to do the same for you.
So we're breaking down UFC on ESPN2 from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Joe, I hear you're going to be attending the event, right?
Oh, I got some let's just throw out a few. I don't know if I doubt that they're a sponsor of yours, but let's throw out some props to DraftKings, who is hooking me up with some wonderful tickets to this event in Philadelphia. So yeah, I will be attending live.
Nice. I'm very jealous, man. The card is full of violence. But just before we start, I'd just like to outline what the latest offer is with the Newsome MMA Premium Bets. We have standard, bronze, silver and gold membership options, but until the start of UFC 236 after the 1 week break, anybody who purchases the silver membership, which is the 6 months membership, will receive the premium bets for the rest of 2019. That's $33 per month if you're from the US, £25 per month if you're from the UK, or €28 per month if you're from anywhere else in Europe. And let's just say we have 3 fight cards on average per month. That's then $11 per card in the USA, £8 per card in the UK, and €9 per card anywhere else in Europe, which is about as good as a deal as you're going to get from anybody with the MMA betting numbers that I have. All other membership options, of course, are available too at newsomemma.co.uk/premium-bets. So let's break down some fights. Now, due to a couple of fighters picking up injuries and short notice replacements jumping in, I'm not sure the final bout order has been confirmed with the UFC. So we'll just break down the new fights at UFC Philadelphia first. So your first fight breakdown, we have Ray Borg versus Kenney. Joe, who have you got?
Wow. It's interesting that we start with a fight where I know very little about the opponent other than his record. Borg has had a bit of bad luck going back to the infamous trolley-bus incident. Kenney doesn't really fight at a really well-known camp. He has got an impressive record at 11-1. It's hard to go against Ray Borg in a situation like this. I believe this is his third opponent that he was supposed to face. He has a decent record in LFA, Kenney. At least it's a decent promotion. He's riding a pretty solid winning streak. I guess he's won his last 4 in a row. He was on the Dana White Contender Series last year. He actually was on twice, which is interesting, about a month apart or 5 weeks apart, where he won the first by unanimous decision and actually lost the second fight on Dana White's Contender Series by a split decision. I don't know if you do, Newsome. I don't remember. He didn't stick out as someone on that season. I'm not sure why they had him fight twice, unless it was because he only won by a decision. But now I guess he's getting the call after a 4-fight win streak in LFA. Look, just on paper, I've got to give it to Ray Borg. I mean, assuming that all of his personal issues have been put aside, he had a good camp. I got to go with Ray Borg. I mean, he's an elite fighter in this weight class. I'm definitely going with Ray Borg here. I don't know what the current number is. I have to believe it's got to be pretty high on Borg, so I don't know if I would bet at a big number.
I don't think the line's released yet for this.
Oh, that's right. You're right. That's the holdup. That's why DraftKings actually hasn't even released salaries on this slate, because the line hasn't been out because of all the opponent changes. I'm guessing it's got to be a 5-1, 6-1, number on Borg, right? I mean, he obviously trains at a good camp. He's actually not. I guess he's not at Wink anymore. But Kenney. I don't know. I'm gonna have to go with Ray Borg here. His last fight, though, warning, was in October of 2017 against Demetrius Johnson. he actually didn't look horrible against Demetrius Johnson. He did lose by armbar in the 5th round, but he's got wins over Jussier Formiga, who just looked really good against Deiveson Figueroa and Luis Smolka. So I'm all in on Borg here. I just don't know if I could recommend this as a bet, at least as a straight up play.
Yeah, I'm going with Ray Borg as well, man. And I do think that this line could be a lot closer than what people imagine. I was watching a bit of tape on Kenney earlier today, man, and that fight with Hermansson in at least for 7.5 minutes from Kenney was just unbelievable. The dude's got crisp boxing. He's got hard leg kicks. He kicks hard to the body as well. He moves well. He's in and out of range. Like I say, and like you've said as well, Joe, he has been known to show a little bit of a cardio deficiency in some of his previous fights, but man, like, he gets going and he's tough, he's fast, he hits hard. But in the same respect, it's hard to go against somebody like Ray Borg. Ray Borg's someone that I've been high on for quite a while. Unfortunately, we haven't seen him, like you said, since 2017 due to the problems that he's had in his personal life with his son, which is, is really sad. And I don't know if he's on the mend or not. I hope he is. But yeah, the personal issues have really held him back. And he was due to fight Joe Benavidez a couple of months ago, but then he pulled out of that fight for undisclosed reasons. So it's been tough for Ray Borg to really get going as of late. But I'm hoping everything sticks together for this fight and it goes ahead and we can see him back in the cage once more. We know what we're getting with Borg. He's quick. His distance management's good. He's in and out of range well. He level changes really quickly. His entry on his takedowns are really good. Kenney also has a decent wrestling and also a decent sprawl game as well. So it could be one of those fights where we see a lot of scrambles and a lot of maybe submission attempts from Borg and escapes again from Kenney. It could be really fun on the mat. But yeah, we know what to expect of Ray Borg. I think we're going to see some good stuff on the ground from both guys. But like I said, it's hard to look past Ray Borg in this fight. The experience that the guy's got, he's fought some top dudes, he's beaten some top dudes, and like you've said, coming out of a good camp, it is really hard to see Ray Borg losing a fight to Kenney on short notice specifically as well. So I'm going to take Ray Borg to win, and I'm going to take him to win via a decision. Now, in the next fight of the night, we've got Jessica Aguilar versus Marina Rodriguez. Again, the last of the short notice fights. It should have been Marina Rodriguez against Alexa Grasso, which I had a bet lined up for Marina Rodriguez. I was really disappointed that that fight got cancelled. It is what it is. Joe, who have you got?
Yeah, I mean, I was very disappointed in Aguilar's last fight. I really thought that she would be able to handle the she had so much more experience over the Chinese fighter. And I was actually shocked that she lost on the ground because, that's always been a strong suit of hers. She's an American top team fighter. I have to believe that age has just crept up on her. I mean, to be finished by armbar by, I want to say a purple belt or a blue belt in Wei Zhang. That told me how bad Jody Escobel is because Aguilar looked so good against Jody Escobel in her prior fight. I'm not sure I understand why she's getting this fight unless it's the UFC just kind of wanting to, throw her a bone and promote, her opponent who's 10-0 and 1, who looked actually that draw against Marcos is looking better and better.
I agree.
Based on how good Marcos has looked. Was on the Dana White's Contender Series, got a knockout, in 2018. I really do kind of like what I see here. Competition has not been bad. She's fought in Shudo, Brazil, Brazilian fighter. I have to say that this is probably going to be the swan song for Jessica Aguilar. And I'm basing this on recency bias. She just did not look great against a vastly inexperienced Chinese fighter and lost on the ground, which, you would have thought would have been her strong suit. Now, I don't know a ton about the camp that this fighter has fought in, but just looking at yeah, again, looking at recency bias, looking at the win on the Contender Series, looking at the majority draw against Randa Marcos, that is enough for me to select Marina Rodriguez in this fight.
Yeah, I'm going the same way as well. Now, as daft as this might sound, and it will sound very odd to some people listening right now, but I actually preferred the Alexa Grasso fight for Marina Rodriguez than I do the Jessica Aguilar fight. Now, Alexa Grasso and Aguilar are on two different trajectories right now in their careers. Obviously, one it appears to be on the decline. The other is still young and has got some some obvious improvements that's going to be made in the career. Now, the reason why I preferred Grasso for Rodriguez is because with Grasso, she was pretty much guaranteed a stand-up fight, a striking fight with no worries or dangers of clinching up and grappling and things like that. And that's where Marina Rodriguez's bread and butter is. It's in the striking, and Muay Thai is good. It is very, very clean. And when I broke down her last fight, when she fought Randa Marcos, I was saying the same things there as well. She reminds me of the old school Anderson Silva style, with the plum clinch, the knees, the nasty elbows, a movement. It's really, really crisp. And with Grasso, I feel she would have pieced her up all night long. But with Aguilar, how long is Aguilar going to actually stand with Rodriguez before she feels that she can't stand there any longer? It's only a matter of time. And for that reason, I just dislike the stylistic matchup a little bit less, because I just don't like knowing that if I've picked a fighter, that their opponent is going to have one thing in their mind, and that's to close the difference, make it ugly, grind, take it to the ground. I hate to bet against that type of fight, and I hate to pick against that type of fight. I think that's what's gonna happen. However, to flip that, to counter it as well, I feel that Marina Rodriguez has already fought a better version of Aguilar and a better version of that grind game in Randa Marcos in a draw where I actually scored that to Marina Rodriguez, and I think she can be a little bit hard done by that, because I thought the decision was clear. In my mind, it was clear anyway. She got the draw, it wasn't a loss. But the point is, I think Randa Marcos is just an overall a better version of Aguilar, and Marina Rodriguez handled that fight pretty well. So I've got Marina Rodriguez to win. I think she's going to finish her as well, so I'm going to take Marina Rodriguez to win via TKO. And in your next fight of the night, we've got Alex Perez versus Mark De La Rosa. Joe, who have you got?
So, I guess the question is which Alex Perez are we going to see here, right? Are we going to see the Alex Perez that just, changed Shorty Torres's life with a beatdown? Or are we going to see the guy that got finished by Joe B., obvious superior fighter? And there was a lot of recency bias, people backing Perez in that fight against Joe B. And then you got Mark De La Rosa, who, is a good fighter. Look, he's 11-1. Guys, if you know anything about me, this comment should not come as a surprise. Has an extremely hot wife and fighter, Montana De La Rosa. Fights out of Fort Worth, Texas. I expected more of him in his last fight against Joby Sanchez. He did win the split decision. I thought he looked better in the Elias Garcia fight. He did lose by Anaconda choke to Tim Elliott, who, one could argue is at the higher end of the spectrum in this weight class. I think we're going to see the Alex Perez that, destroyed Shorty Torres. So I am going to go back to the well here with Alex Perez. I like him to potentially finish this fight. But Mark De La Rosa is game, man. He's very, very game. I expect it to be competitive for as long as it lasts, but I do like Alex Perez to come back in this fight and get the win.
Yeah, I'm going the same way as you again, man. I think Alex Perez is going to pick up the win again here. From Mark De La Rosa's point of view, the loss to Tim Elliott, that was short notice for him, and it was his UFC debut, and there was a lot of things, under the bright lights of the UFC, and I'm not going to say he froze up on the night, but I think Tim Elliott was just a more experienced, savvy vet, and had his way with him that night. And in the next fight that Mark De La Rosa had, again, we're now not knowing too much about the dude just because of the points I've mentioned. So then he fights Elias Garcia. Now, Elias Garcia is in that same position. So he's the one making his UFC debut. He's the one on short notice. And Elias Garcia gets dealt with. He gets submitted. It was a dominant performance by Mark De La Rosa. So then he goes into the Joby Sanchez fight. And still at this point, we don't know too much about Mark De La Rosa because of the points that I've mentioned in both of his previous fights. And then I agree with you, Joe. I felt a little underwhelmed by the performance. I think he won. The split, I'm surprised it was a split. It should have been unanimous, but it was close enough for it to be a split decision. And I expected Mark De La Rosa to really show a little bit more than what he did against Sanchez. So now you're matching him up against Alex Perez, and like I say, I think Perez is the better fighter. I think he's the better striker. His offensive wrestling is better. His defensive wrestling is better. I think he's probably quicker. His striking's more accurate. The one worry I have for Alex Perez here is I cannot explain that Joe B fight. Like, how do you explain it? You can watch it time and time again, and it's almost strange of how he gets rocked, and I don't know. I can't explain it. It just looks like it shouldn't. The shots that he got hit with look like it shouldn't have affected him as much as it did. And sort of like at the higher end of the weight classes, you can start pinpointing that and thinking, okay, it could have been a hard shot, a clipped hard shot. But rocking a fighter in that way, you don't see it so much in the flyweight division. So it's just really strange what happened to Perez. I can't put too much stock into it unless it happens again. So for that reason, I just think Perez is going to have the advantages everywhere in this fight, as long as he hasn't obtained some weird damage from that Joe B fight, which I wouldn't imagine he has. I think he'll be able to eat the shots of De La Rosa coming in, and I think we're just going to see a complete performance from Perez. I think we're going to see combinations. I think we're going to see aggression. I think we're going to see the odd takedown. I don't see him keeping Mark De La Rosa down for too long. De La Rosa, again, good scrambler, good grappler himself. I think he will be able to make his way back up to his feet when need be. I don't think we're going to see De La Rosa score any takedowns. If we do, again, I think Perez will pop straight back up. I just think over 3 rounds, Perez is going to land the slightly more shots. He's going to hit the slightly more takedowns, and I think he's going to make it easy for the judges. So I've got Alex Perez to win, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. Now, in the next fight of the night, we've got Marina Moroz against the newcomer Sabina Mazo. Joe, who have you got?
Yeah, so let's talk about Sabina Mazo first. Or I should say Sabina Mazo's, a.k.a. the Colombian Queen. A 6-0 fighter who is training out of Muay Thai Medellin. Interesting. I wonder if there's like photos of Pablo Escobar anywhere there. They also have her down as King's MMA for other, so I don't know if she has spent some time at King's MMA, which would be a big plus, for her. But, look, this is a 6-0 fighter. She's 22 years old. She is somewhat of a decision fighter. Her last 2 wins, again, fighting in LFA is good. At least it's a recognizable promotion. But her last 2 wins were by decision. If you go back to her decision win in April of 2018 against Shannon Sin, Shannon Sin has got a 5-7 record. So, we're talking about decision wins against so-so opposition. So Marina Moroz, love her or hate her. She's got an 8-3 record. Russian fighter, 27 years old, has got UFC experience, coming off 2 decision losses to Angela Hill and Carla Esparza with a split decision win against Daniel Taylor. Prior to that, she beat Christina Stanchio and lost to Valerie Letourneau. I'm guessing, maybe you agree or disagree, Newsome. Her best win was probably her first round armbar against Joanne Calderwood in 2015. Going back, 4 years. But that was 4 years ago, and I guess we're just, I don't know where she does her camp, but we're not seeing, the improvement that you might expect. She is only 27. I don't know what the UFC is thinking here. Maybe they think more of Mazo than I do, based on the quality of opponents. But I think this is a fight that Moroz should win. So if they're trying to actually, pare down the weight class, I don't know if this is the way to do it, because I don't see specifically where Mazo has the advantage here, and I'm really surprised, quite surprised, that she's a 160 favorite, with 6 wins against inferior opponents. So I may have to take a play. I may have to make a play at plus 140 on, as much as I don't want to. I might have to make a play on Moroz at plus 140. She's far more experienced, coming against a relative unknown with a 6-0 record, against subpar opposition. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with some of the points you've made for sure, which I'll talk about very shortly. But I'm going the opposite way in this fight, and I'm actually going to pick Sabina Mazo to win. From what I've seen of Mazo, I like a striking game. We haven't seen too much of a ground game, but Marina Moroz doesn't offer that sort of offense. She's not someone that will look to get the fight to the mat, at least regularly. Mazo, to me, a striking's crisp. It comes in volume as well. She does look like she's a little open defensively, so maybe the length of Moroz could capitalise on that as she's coming in. But it's the constant movement, being on her toes, in and out of range, and just landing something. It might not be hard, it might not be crisp, but it's just landing something. And a lot of these fights, with this stylistic matchup between the two, will end up going to a decision, and I think this is a fight that could end up going to a decision. And I think Marina Moroz hits a lot of air. I don't think she connects on half as much as the shots as what is made out by the metrics and probably what the judges see as well. I don't know, man. I do like Mazo in this fight. A striking, to me, is better than Moroz, and when I think that it's going to be a striking battle, it automatically makes me lean towards Mazo for sure. Now, the one thing that does concern me, and you mentioned it as well, Joe, is the experience, because yes, Mazo's been on LFA, which is a good regional promotion, but listen, Moroz has fought Joanne Calderwood, she's fought Valerie Letourneau, Christina Stanju, Danielle Taylor, Carla Esparza, Angela Hill. These are all names that we know because they've all fought in the UFC, so the experience could play a part in this fight. We've seen it time and time again, fighters coming into the UFC on the debut, and they freeze up. They're not the same fighter, and then they come back the next fight and they look totally different. And it's just the UFC jitters. It's the debut jitters, man. They're real, and they are there. Now, for Moroz, I just feel that is something that she could capitalise on. And even though I'm picking Mazo to win, I'm almost having flashbacks of the Ariane Lipski and Joanne Calderwood fight, because it's a similar line. It's a fighter that was highly thought of coming into the UFC. Mazo's not as obviously highly thought of as what Lipski was. Lipski was a champion over in KSW, but it's a fighter that's on the debut like Lipski, fighting an experienced fighter in Moroz like Joanne Calderwood, and I'm telling you, like I'm feeling that it could be one of those trap bets that get you to put your money on, because the tape is so visibly clear. But then when the two actually meet in the cage, octagon jitters versus experience is not a good combination. So I'd be very careful from that point of view. I don't hate the play, Joe, if that's the play that you're going to be making. But for me personally, I think Mazo's the better striker. I have to go on what I can see in regards of technique. I think Mazo's got better technique. I think she moves better. I think she lands more, and the landing more is going to be key if it goes to a decision, which, like I said, I feel it can. But let's not forget, Mazo has got 2 highlight reel and knockout head kicks. Go and watch them on YouTube, or go on the Tape Index. I should really be plugging that on the Newsome MMA website. So go and watch those head kick knockouts, man. They are phenomenal. But yeah, I've got it going to a decision, and I'm going to take Mazo to take that decision. And in the next fight of the night, we've got Kevin Holland versus Gerald Meerschaert. Joe, who have you got?
Yeah, so this is interesting. I mean, Meerschaert is one of those guys, like, I don't know if they have this expression in the UK, but he's a real, like, lunch pail type of fighter. He's
never heard that, man.
Yeah, he's been like plugging away for, plugging away for years. He's only 31 years old, but has 39 professional fights. So, this is a guy that, maybe should have been in the UFC a little bit earlier. And even at 31, I fear he may be on the downward slope. He's a very opportunistic fighter. He's got a sneaky ground game. That rear naked choke against Oscar Pacoda. I was actually at that fight, the Ultimate Fighter 27 final. And then, lo and behold, he just gets destroyed by Jack Hermansson. Was not a big dog in that fight either. If you liked Hermansson, you got some good value there. So yeah, maybe there's a little bit of recency bias, but if you look at Meerschaert's record, he's had these streaks where he'd win, 6-7 fights in a row, and then like lose a fight or two. Like he's had a couple of battles against Sam Alvey, won one, lost one. Kenny Robertson, lost a fight to Kenny Robertson. So he's this grinding kind of lunch pail fighter that's been struggling in the in the lower promotions, for a number of years. I mean, he goes at 31 years old. He goes all the way back to his first professional fight happening in 2007. So, I mean, like, we could do the math here. That's, that was 19 years old. He had his first fight. So he's been around. What Kevin Holland brings to the table is where Meerschaert is going to have to rely on guile, to win fights. Kevin Holland is a plus athlete. I mean, say what you like about him. He's a character in the ring. That Santos fight was comical. Kevin Holland is a plus athlete. He did take that Santos fight on short notice, so I get it. But he's coming off of, a win against John Phillips, who, let us all down last week, by rear naked choke. And he actually looked pretty good standing in that fight, too. And then it's interesting. He actually had, according to Tapology, he actually participated in a grappling bout in a few weeks ago, actually. Which I don't know what happened there, but it was like he was in a grappling bout against somebody named Kyle Short, and he won in that grappling bout. So at least he's been staying active. He's a plus athlete. I like him here. I mean, I don't know if I would bet him at minus 190, which is I believe where it might even be higher now. Which is I believe where the line is here. No, it's minus 190. It looks like it opened at minus 215. Now it's down to minus 190. So as a pick, I like Kevin Holland. I just don't know if I can endorse a wager at these odds.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the same wavelength for this as well. Now, when you look at style versus style, there's absolutely no way that Meerschaert should be coming into this fight with a game plan to stand with Holland. He's too elusive. He's too crazy. He'll talk to you inside the cage. He'll make you feel at home, and then he'll start hurting you, which will confuse you. But no, all jokes aside, the dude's a good elusive striker. He moves well. He moves unorthodox. He'll be very hard to get a training partner to emulate in your fight camp. And I just cannot see Gerald Meerschaert wanting to stand in this fight. And if he does want to stand, I think he'll change his mind sort of like 90 seconds, 2 minutes into the fight. And then we'll start to look for him to get the fight to the mat. And that's really where his bread and butter is, to an extent. And what I mean by to an extent is 20 of his wins out of 28 of his overall wins have come via submission, which is phenomenal. That's a submission expert right there. But then you look at his losses. He's lost 10 fights, and 8 of those 10 fights he's lost by submission. So what that tells me is that he's great offensively, but when it comes to defensive positions, he's not well, he's more vulnerable, should I say. And listen, Kevin Holland has got 6 wins via knockout. He's got 6 wins via submission. So he's well-rounded, man. I'm not sure if Meerschaert starts to take him down that he can do that safely. He's lost a few via guillotine. Kevin Holland's got a few submission wins via guillotine. Honestly, it could get very dangerous for Meerschaert if he takes him down to the ground too. So it's all ultimately getting me to a point where I'm thinking, well, where does Meerschaert actually win this fight? If it goes to a decision, out of 38 fights, Meerschaert's only gone to 3 decisions. Out of 17 fights for Holland, it's only gone to 4 decisions. So, neither are that versed in really expecting a 15-minute fight. So one must think that the fight is going to be finished. And man, I don't know. I don't see Meerschaert getting the win. I think Kevin Holland's gonna get the win. Meerschaert's tough. I actually think what's going to happen is Kevin Holland is going to be, like I've said, his elusive self, and I think he's going to start piecing Meerschaert up on the feet. But Meerschaert's tough. I think he'll take that and then start reverting to his wrestling. And I think in a scramble or in a poor entry, I think Kevin Holland's going to snatch a neck, and I think he's going to choke him out. So I've got Kevin Holland to win, and I'm going to take him to win via submission. Now, in the next fight of the night, we've got Enrique El Fuerte Barzola versus Kevin Aguilar. Joe, who have you got?
Okay, so I am going to come right out and say that I am highly biased again for Enrique Barzola. I mean, I just absolutely love this guy. I think he is one of the underrated fighters in the featherweight class. And why am I biased, you asked? This guy is DraftKings gold. I mean, if you looked at his last 4 fights, his last 4 wins, 10 takedowns against Davis, 5 takedowns against Bassett, 9 takedowns against Benitez, 7 takedowns against Avila. He is a rinse and repeat takedown artist, which is DraftKings gold. I really like this guy a lot. The line is really close. I'm considering making a wager on him. Aguilar is not a bad fighter. But if you look at, his wins, okay, he has got a win over Rick Glenn, who is definitely on the decline. Prior to that was a split decision victory over Joey Gomez in the Contender Series, where Gomez, put it on him for a while. Could have certainly won that too. Yeah, could have certainly won that fight. So, here is a guy that can be taken down in Aguilar, fighting against a rinse and repeat takedown artist who, by the way, trains at American Top Team. So I really do like Aguilar here. I don't necessarily understand why the line is so close. It kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I'm going with Barzola here. I like him a fair amount. I did a 4-fighter parlay. Barzola is one of the guys that I put in my parlay. I think he's great value. I think he's going to take Aguilar down at will. I'm not familiar with the camp where Aguilar trains, but it is certainly no American Top Team. Longview MMA, which is in Longview, Texas, is no American Top Team. No, not casting any aspersions on the camp, but it's not ATT. So I really like Barzola a fair amount here. Now, caution, this is probably going to be a decision because that's how Barzola fights. I mean, he is a rinse and repeat takedown artist. He does not necessarily look to finish when he takes these guys down. He looks for control. He looks to advance, but he doesn't necessarily look for the finish. So I could see a really high-scoring decision here, something along the lines of 30-27 for Barzola, and that's who I'm going to go with.
Yeah, I'm going to start with Barzola as well because I'm also a huge fan of the guy. I've won a lot of money from him in the past. Similar reasons why I've won so much money on him to what you've scored so highly on him in DraftKings, and you've hit a lot of the good points. He is a rinse and repeat takedown artist. His grappling is getting better. He does look to take the back when he can as well. But his opponents do tend to get up quite often, but that's fine. He doesn't mind that because he'll stick to the opponent and he'll just keep grinding and staying with it and chaining the takedowns, going from a single to a double, double to a single, then looking for trips. He looks for different methods to get his fighter to the ground. And the one thing that does help him in this scenario is his grip. Once he's got his hands locked behind the body of his opponent, it's really tough to shake the guy off. He attaches himself to the opponent that strongly that he causes so many problems in there. But Barzola, for me, has improved his striking massively over the years. You know, he came into the UFC, he looked like the type of guy that strikes to close the distance, strikes to get close to get the entries on his takedowns, but he's evolved his game. American Top Team have helped phenomenally with that as well, and now he's a striker that can hold his own on the feet. And what that allows him to do is that allows him to like I say, hold his own, to be scoring, to be competitive until the opening is right to start shooting takedowns, and that allows him to not be telegraphed by his opponent. It allows him to successfully complete more of his takedowns because he's not making it obvious when he's shooting in, and his overall game is so good. And if you're still not sold by his striking, go and watch the Gabriel Benitez fight. Gabriel Benitez is not a bad striker. In fact, he's a very good striker. And Barzola was absolutely holding his own with him. He showed he was durable. He showed that he could strike with a technical guy. You know, Benitez wanted nothing to do with that ground game, yet Barzola was looking good on the feet as well. So the dude can strike. Also, like you've mentioned, Joe, American Top Team, like I mentioned time and time again over the last few podcasts, is American Top Team are drilling in these calf kicks into every single one of the fighters. It is a weapon that is slowly becoming more and more used. We saw it with Chris Gutierrez last week, so I'm not saying it's just American Top Team that drills this, but the low calf kicks are becoming used so much because they're so damaging, they're so effective, and I just feel that the low calf kick is going to be implemented into Enrique Barzola's striking and attack against Aguilar. So again, there's just a lot of things that I like about Barzola. Now on Aguilar's side, he's not a bad fighter, but he's also not a fighter that's massively impressed me from what I've seen anyway. He's a striker that looks a little lost coming forward. He's definitely more of a counter striker, so we saw that in the last fight with Rick Glenn. You know, Rick Glenn was coming forward and Rick Glenn played the exact fight that Aguilar wanted him to play. He was the one coming forward, and because of that, he was the one getting tagged. Aguilar was using some nice angles and nice exits, so he was throwing and then exiting, and he played a really good game from that perspective. But the reason he had so much success against Rick Glenn is because Rick Glenn would just not stop going forward and wanting to attack Aguilar in straight lines, and he couldn't have played into Aguilar's game more perfectly, and that's the reason why Rick Glenn didn't win that fight. Now for me with Barzola, when Barzola if Aguilar's coming forward at Barzola, don't mind that too much because the volume subsides a little bit from Aguilar. He doesn't put combinations together as well. He just doesn't look as comfortable going forward as he does going backwards. So I'm not too fussed if he's coming forward. I think Barzola will be able to chop at the legs, and if he does get too close, he'll just level change and close the distance and try and take Aguilar down anyway. But then going forward, when Barzola's going forward and he's attacking, he's not going to be coming in a straight line. He's not going to be wanting to mess about too long inside boxing range where Aguilar's going to start counter striking him. When he's too close for that boxing range, it'll be a level change or it'll be a clinch up and starting to look to get the fight to the mat. So I just feel that with Barzola moving in and out of range as he's coming forward at the same time, I think he's going to null the counter-striking game of Aguilar, and I think he's going to start setting up some takedowns. I think it's going to be a decision. I think it's going to be another one of those fights where we see sort of 5, 6, 7 takedowns. It's going to get to a point where later in the fight, Aguilar's hesitant to strike just because he's going to be afraid of being taken down once again. So I've got Enrique Barzola to win. I'm going to take him to win via decision. Now, how is this a pick'em?
How is this line a pick'em? I don't get it.
Aguilar's 16-1, and he's beaten some good guys. He came in on his UFC debut, and he fought a solid fight against a gritty guy in in Rick Glenn. But
okay.
I that's the only reason. I mean, you asked the question why I think it's a pick'em, and that's why I think it's a pick'em. But stylistically, I think it's a good fight for Barzola, man. I really.
I think there's great line value in Barzola. Great line value at this price.
And in the next fight of the night, we've got Ross Pearson versus Desmond Green. Joe, who have you got?
Ross Pearson. I so want this guy to retire. I really do. I mean, you probably have more of a narrative on Pearson than I could offer. I mean, when you're at that point in your career where the best thing you could say about a fighter is he is tough as shit, or nails, or whatever expression you want to use. I'm tired of seeing him getting lit up. I mean, one of the surest bets that I made in a long time was when he fought John Makdessi, and I was on Makdessi. I thought Makdessi offered incredible line value, in that fight. So I was on Makdessi. Des Green, this is not going to be an easier fight for him. I definitely like Des Green in this fight a fair amount. Not that I'm in love with Des Green as a fighter. I mean, he's 21-8. But recently he's looked pretty good. They fed him, Tasmanov, and Prazeres and Rustam Kobalov. He's had some tough guys that he's fought against. Obviously he beat a post-USADA, Gleison Tebow, but I think this is another fight to say, hey, we threw you Tysonov last time. We're going to make it up to you by giving you Ross Pearson here. He's tough as all get-go, but this is a fight that you should win. So I'm going to go with Desmond Green here, but I would certainly not lay, heavy chalk on him.
Yeah, I agree as well. And, from Ross Pearson's point of view, you've got to hand it to the guy in a way, because over the last 3 years, this is going to be his 8th fight. So he's fought a lot, man. And unfortunately, over those, it's 7 until we see him inside the cage this week. Over those 7, he's only won twice. Chad Laprise, Mizuta, Hirota. And the Chad Laprise fight was also very, very close. You could argue that he lost that fight as well. So it doesn't look great for him. And I suppose the argument you could have is he has lost to some good guys. Dan Hooker, Jorge Masvidal, Will Brooks at the time, Stevie Ray. So I like Ross Pearson as a fighter, but unfortunately, it's one of those positions where you're watching a fighter decline each time that he steps inside the cage. And I don't mean any disrespect to Ross. I think he's had a fantastic career, and he's represented the UK MMA scene absolutely perfectly in his career. But yeah, like I said, it's just one of those things. Unfortunately, fighters decline as they've had so many fights. He's had 35 fights. He's 20-15, so the record's slowly creeping up on him. Again, that's another sign of the decline. I think Des Green's going to win this fight relatively comfortably. I don't know if he'll knock Ross Pearson out. Ross Pearson is, like you've said, tough as shit, and the problem that you always get with Des Green is he fights to the level of his opponent. So if his opponent, like I say, you look at the Tysonov fight, okay? So Mehmet Tysonov is a fucking animal, and yet he goes in there over 3 rounds and keeps it competitive. I think he rocked Tysonov at one point as well, So he fought an amazing fight against Tysonov, but you wind it back one fight before that, Gleison Tebow, who you could also argue might be on a decline, now out of the UFC, fighting in other promotions. And yes, he beat him comfortably over 3 rounds, but he didn't set the world alight with that performance, So I do get a sense of Green just fighting to the level of his opponent. Now, because of that, the fights will almost always be relatively close, or be a 2-round-to-1 scenario where it should be a dominant 3 rounds. So I do have those concerns for that reason. I don't, I think the minus 400 line is quite high. I know he opened a lot lower. I sort of tend to agree with the minus 300 opener. I think that should be where he should be about in this fight. But I think Des Green's going to just land the more volume. I don't think we're going to see much wrestling in this fight. I think it's just going to be a kickboxing fight. And I think Des Green his cardio will outlast Ross Pearson's. And like I say, I just think he'll outstrike him. So I'm going to take Des Green to win, and I'm going to take him to win by decision. Now, in the next fight of the night, and this is one I am stoked for, we've got Sheymon Moraes versus Sodiq Yusuff. Joe, who have you got?
Wow, this Moraes gets no respect. I mean, he really doesn't. He makes his debut in the UFC against none other than Zabit as a minus 4-1 underdog here. It was a plus 400 favorite, a plus 400 underdog in that fight, and actually did not look awful against Zabit. Then he comes back against a Dana White Contender Series guy in Matt Sales, as a slight underdog, and wins that fight by decision. And then he goes up against Julio Arce, where he is once again a plus 215 underdog, and wins that by split decision. Although I thought he may have won that, should have won that by unanimous decision. I'm trying to recall my notes on that fight, and I thought he pretty clearly won that fight. I was surprised. And now you got, Sodiq Yusuff, right, who is a Lloyd Irvin fighter, which is where James Vick trains, James Vick's teammate. James Vick not noticeably, but it's known that he bet money on Sodiq when he was fighting in the Contender Series last year as a 230 underdog, and he obviously won that bet by unanimous decision. Then he goes in and he fights Suman Mokhtarian, who's part of that. I think his brother is one of the owners of Australian Top Team, and gets him by round 1 KO. Which, don't get me wrong, that was an impressive win, but I am not convinced that Suman Mokhtarian is a UFC caliber fighter. So, here we go again. He goes to fight Sheymon Moraes. I really want to go with the dog here because I want to see more by Yusuff. I mean, I don't know that, winning by decision on the Contender Series and then, KOing a clearly inferior and probably not UFC caliber opponent is any better than the last 3 fights that Moraes has had, where he's won 2 of them. So I would be tempted to take the dog money here. I don't know if I would bet the fight, but I guess I'm going to pick the upset here. I see Moraes by decision. Would it surprise me if Sodiq came out and caught him with something? No, but if Zabit couldn't put him away, if Arce, who is one of the better technical boxers, Golden Gloves champion, at 145 couldn't outstrike him. I don't necessarily see Yusuff as having superior stand-up, but I'm going to go with Moraes here as the dog.
Yeah, first and foremost, totally agree with the disrespect on Sheymon Moraes. Now, I did pick against him in the Julio Arce fight. I did pick against him in the Zabit fight. I cashed on him as an underdog versus Matt Sales, so I have picked against him twice. Now, that's not disrespect. You can pick against a fighter and that's fine, and you can bet against a fighter and that's also fine. But it's the disrespect he gets on the line, and it's also the disrespect he gets from the public as well. And I just don't agree with it, man. I'm going to list some fighters. Julio Arce, Zabit Magomedsharipov, Luis Palomino, Robbie Peralta, Marlon Moraes. These are guys that Sheymon Moraes has been in a cage with. Some really, really good guys. The dude's experience is completely head and shoulders above Sodiq Yusuff. Now, the problem I have is I feel that, and I'm gonna put my neck on the line saying this. I think that although Sodiq Yusuff hasn't got anywhere close to the experience that Sheymon Moraes has got, I believe that I like to think that I've got a good eye for spotting the raw talent before they've got the experience, and I honestly think Sodiq Yusuff is going to be the real deal. I love everything that I've seen from him. Now, I do agree with you, Joe, that Suman Mokhtarian probably isn't UFC level, but I tell you who is UFC level. Mike Davis, who he fought in the Contender Series. What a fight that was. How Mike Davis isn't in the UFC right now, I've got no idea, because I'm telling you, that guy would come in and starch a lot of the fighters in the division. But Sodiq Yusuff, what I love about him, he's aggressive, he's powerful, he's quick, he throws in combinations, he's got a calf kick, already been through that once tonight, how much I love that, that attack. So he's got the calf kick, he can take a punch, he can take damage, and it looks like it hasn't even affected him in the slightest. Mike Davis landed bombs on him, man, and he just walked through them like they were nothing. He ate up Mike Davis's leg for 15 minutes, crumbled him a couple of times, dropped him a couple of times with the power. If his opponent gets in his face and starts winging, Yusuff throws down, man. He trusts that chin, which looks granite, by the way, and he throws back his own power, and suddenly that starts making his opponents hesitant. Now, I understand where you came from, Joe, when you're saying with the Julio Arce, the Golden Gloves thing, and if he can't really beat Sheymon in a striking battle and has to start looking for the takedowns, then maybe Sodiq may struggle. But the difference is how they strike. So Arce is a more technical striker. He's crisp, he's accurate, but he'll fight on the back foot a little bit as well, whereas Sodiq's aggressive. And this is where I think Sheymon Moraes is going to get put in some bad spots, because when Moraes has got time to pick his shots, he's got that traditional Muay Thai stance and Muay Thai style where he's very slow, he's very flat-footed until it's time to go. Doesn't really offer too much movement. Like I say, it's a classic Muay Thai stance and style. But when he's on the back foot, when he's given time, he can be good. But when he's on the back foot, I'm not sure that his array of attacks and his exits and his angles and his overall movement is going to be to the standard, to the level it should be to start exiting and angling away from someone as aggressive and powerful as Sodiq. I think this fight ultimately will depend on Sodiq's aggression. If Sodiq allows himself to come on the back foot a little too much, I think Sheymon Moraes will enjoy that more. I think he'll enjoy the time. I think he'll pick his shots at Sodiq, and you'll really start to see the level of experience show in that scenario. But if Sodiq's the aggressor for the majority of the fight, I don't think we see the scorecards, and I think we see Sheymon Moraes get knocked out. And ultimately, that's the way I'm siding, because Sodiq is imposing in the cage. Like I said, he trusts his chin and he's got power, and that is a dangerous combination to have as an opponent. So when Sheymon Moraes is looking to the other side of the cage and he sees a guy that can knock your chin into Rosa and a guy that will walk through anything that you throw at his own chin, that's a scary fucking prospect, man. So I'm going to take Sodiq Yusuff to win. I think his career is going to blossom. I think his ceiling's high, and I'm going to take him to beat Sheymon Moraes via knockout. And in the next fight of the night, we've got Paul Craig versus Kennedy Nzechukwu. Joe, who have you got?
Yeah, I do not know, in all honesty, a lot about this fighter. It's generally enough for me to just want to fade Paul Craig, who's got one of the coolest nicknames in MMA, and was probably a half a second away from, getting his UFC pink slip, pulling off that miraculous late-minute choke.
Let's not spend too much time in that fight, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was painful for everybody. So let's talk about the positives, Kennedy. Fortis MMA, solid camp. Guy's huge. He's 6'5". As a light heavyweight, doesn't seem to have any issues making weight. Dana White Contender Series is what got him here in August. I don't know what he's been doing since then, but in August 2018, as a minus 600 favorite, he beat a fighter by the name of Dennis Bryant by head kick and punches, which is quite impressive considering his size. Has a solid win streak in LFA. I guess he had a fight in LFA where he also won by KO. This guy's a finisher. Dana White Contender Series in 2017, split decision against Anton Perez, he seems to be an evolving fighter. He is young at only 26, which the higher weight classes, they tend to develop a lot slower. So 26 is really young, for a light heavyweight. And, I like his camp. So based on that alone, I'm going to go with Kennedy here. Not that Paul Craig, we've seen it before, can't, come up with throw up some submission. We don't know. I don't know what Kennedy's wrestling credentials are. I don't know what kind of ground game he has. Hopefully Fortis will prepare him for the type of fight that, Paul Craig throws. And Paul Craig has got that, chance to have a sneaky submission win. So I'm going to pick Kennedy with the knowledge with the understanding that I don't know a ton about him other than what I saw in Dana White and the fact that he stays trains at a good camp and, a partial fade against Paul Craig.
Yeah, I'm at a crossroads with this fight. I really am. And it's one that I've gone back and forth with because Paul Craig, I think he gets way more hate than what he deserves. I think he's a better fighter than some people make him out to be. And when you actually look at Paul Craig's record, he's only lost 3 times, and the 3 times have come to Tyson Pedro, who at the time was looking good. Obviously, we know that his IQ has fell off a cliff lately. Khalil Roundtree, who would knock anybody out who he hits clean in the face with a hard shot. And then we've got Jim Crute, who I think is a genuine prospect in the division. His 3 losses aren't bad losses. That's the point I'm trying to make. Yes, he was going to lose to Magomed Ankalaev, and he got the last third of a second submission. But, some people will class that as a loss. But again, Magomed Ankalaev, prospect. And I just feel that he's had some really hard fights in the UFC. Now, Kennedy, for me, is very raw and very green. But the danger you've got of taking someone like Paul Craig in this fight is because Kennedy's 6-0, 26, fighting out of Fortis MMA, I can almost guarantee each time we see him inside this cage for the next few years, he's just going to look better and better and better. And for that reason, it's sort of hard to gauge, especially right now coming into the UFC on his debut, how much better he's got since his last fought. It's almost one of those unknown factors that, in fact, you can't factor into your decision. And he had the Dana White Contender Series fight against Anton Berzin. Berzin was landed a takedown in that fight. I think he landed a couple, and he just stopped going to the takedown the longer the fight went on, and just allowed himself to get picked off at range because Kennedy's huge. He's gonna have that length and that range over most fighters, and will to a slight degree against Paul Craig because Paul Craig's quite tall himself. But if Berzin kept on going to that takedown and kept on looking to grapple, I think he would have got Kennedy out of there. Again, it's all ifs and buts because it never happened. But it's just a take that I've got from what I saw. Now then, he came out of the Contender Series and he went and had 2 more fights before he came back to the Contender Series again. The guy that he fought after Berzin, Andre Kavanaugh, 7-13. The fighter he fought after that, Corey Johnson, 0-0. It was Corey Johnson's debut. And then he goes back into the UFC, the Dana White Contender Series, to fight Dennis Bryant, who's 5-1. Okay, looks good. But then you click into Dennis Bryant and you go and look at his record, and the fighters that he's been fighting are just not very good. So he's fought a guy that was 3-3, 1-1, 5-16, 8-8, 4-11. So again, that 5-1, you're arguing that that's a padded record as well. So for me, Kennedy is very, very green, and the line on him at sort of like -215, I think, is absolutely crazy. I'm actually going to take Paul Craig to win this fight. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm sure people give me a lot of shit if he loses. But I can only pick on what I see in tape. I can't start assuming that Kennedy's going to be X, Y, and Z because he's had so much development and improvement over X amount of months. I can't do that. I can only go on what I see. So I think Paul Craig's going to be able to land takedowns here. And his grappling is good. I don't care what anybody says. His grappling is good. And he was taking Ankalaev down. He took Jim Crute down a couple of times as well. I think he's going to get Kennedy down. I think he's going to sub him. So I'm going to take Paul Craig to win via submission. And in the next fight of the night, we've got Karolina Kowalkiewicz against Michelle Waterson. Joe, who have you got?
So I'm going to start this with a bad joke, with which we've heard before when Paige Van Zandt fought Rachel Ostovich. This is a fight with two of the more attractive UFC female fighters, and this is probably one where the corners are going to Vaseline themselves. In any case, who do I like? Who do I like for the fight? Look, this is an interesting fight because both of these fighters have had their ups and downs. KK, obviously, still like that joke, huh? KK has fought, Joanna, has had some really high level competition. She's 12-3. Don't know a lot about her fight camp. She got destroyed by Jessica Andrade in her last fight. Beat Felice Herrig by split decision. Seems like Jodie Esquibel is everybody's punching bag. Lost to Claudia again. Claudia was a different fighter back in 2017. And now she's fighting, split decision win against Rose Namajunas. And now she's fighting Michelle Waterson. So, on paper, I would have to give this fight to KK. It's lined very closely. I am obviously a big Michelle Waterson fan as well. Michelle Waterson's older. She, again, also beat Felice Herrig and Courtney Casey, although a lot of people felt that Casey actually won that decision. Got beat badly by Torres. Actually, not so much badly by Torres. Beat badly by Rose Namajunas. So if you're looking at MMA math in any way, shape, or form here, you really have to give this fight to KK, and that's the way I'm leaning on this fight. Yes, I like that she, trains at Jackson Wink and trains with Holly Holm, but look, she's 33 years old here. KK is a much younger fighter at, let's see, how old is KK? KK is actually KK's 33 as well. I did not realize she was that old. Okay, well, there goes that ageism out the window. But anyway, I think KK has fought a higher level of competition here. It'd be interesting to me to see if Michelle Waterson tries to take this down. I think she will. She was impressive to me against, Felice Herrig. I do like the fact that Michelle Waterson has got a sneaky ground game. She can sub, but at heart, she's really a karate fighter. I don't think she's going to be able to muscle, KK, like maybe she muscled Felice Herrig, who's also a fairly strong fighter. But I am going to pick KK here. But this is a fight that I'm going to enjoy watching a lot more than wagering on for obvious reasons. So I will give a lukewarm endorsement here to Karolina Kowalkiewicz.
Yeah, I'm going to agree as well, but man, it's a good job that we're not judging how a fighter is going to be coming back in the next fight when they're facing another hard puncher, because just that knockout from Jessica Andrade on Kowalkiewicz was probably the only time that I've seen a fight in women's MMA with a knockout that was just a one bomb that absolutely deaded the other woman. And for anybody listening right now, if you can think of one that I can't, drop the highlight in the YouTube comments, because I will want to see that for sure. For this fight in particular, though, I think it's very simple to break down. I think it all depends on Michelle Waterson. I think if Michelle Waterson can get the fight to the mat with regularity and spend time on top, I think she would either take a decision or she could potentially find a submission on Kowalkiewicz. It comes down to that, because anywhere else this fight goes, I feel that it's Kowalkiewicz's fight to lose. She's the better striker, she's the crisper striker, she's the better mover. I know Michelle Waterson's got this karate style, and that's sort of where her martial arts began with, but I just think the the kickboxing style of Kowalkiewicz will trump that karate style of Waterson, and I think it will make Waterson start to look to get the fight to the mat, which she seems to do in most of her fights anyway. But the problem with Waterson's takedowns is they tend to be that head and arm throw, and I just don't think that's going to wash against someone like Kowalkiewicz now. I don't think she's going to be able to close the distance and grab a hold of Kowalkiewicz for long enough to be able to start attempting those. But I just don't think Kowalkiewicz will be susceptible to be taken down consistently anyway via head and arm throws. I think Waterson would have to look more to a traditional takedown, which I just don't think is in a repertoire. So for that reason, I think the fight predominantly stays on the feet. I think the fight is won and lost on the feet. And for that reason, I favour Karolina Kowalkiewicz. So I've got Kowalkiewicz to win, and I'm going to take her to win via decision. Now, in your next fight of the night, and this is one that I know we're going to disagree on, Joe, straight away, we've got Josh Emmett returning versus Michael Johnson. Who have you got?
Yeah, yeah, we are going to disagree slightly on this one. Look, Michael Johnson, you know, at one point was a really good fighter. I mean, the first UFC event I ever attended, you know, Michael Johnson fought Nate Diaz that was in December 2015. From that point on, he won a fight. He came back. He bounced back with a fight against Poirier, which he won in the first round as an underdog, and then went and lost 3 fights to Khabib, Gaethje, and Darren Elkins. Tough opponents, obviously. You know, Khabib is the man. These are all fights at lightweight. You know, Elkins, and then, you know, he wins. He decides to drop down to featherweight and wins a controversial split decision against Andre Fili. Some people gave that fight to Fili. I thought it was pretty close. I didn't think it was quite a robbery. I could have seen it gone either way. And then as a minus 700 favorite, goes to unanimous decision against Artem Lobov. Could not put Lobov away at 145. Okay, so now we got Josh Emmett. Okay, I've been super impressed, you know, with Emmett. Team Alpha Male, trained fighter. You know, he loses you know, he has a dominant performance against Scott Holtzman. Loses a split decision to Des Green. That was a fairly close fight. You know, the win against Philip Orantes, I mean, that was a fight he should have won, so I'm not going to give him too much props there. But then Lamas, I mean, he just nukes Lamas in the first round. Okay, and then that gets him a fight with Jeremy Stephens. Okay, that was a really controversial fight. If you remember that fight against Jeremy Stephens, there was borderline illegality in that fight that got Stephens that win. And he has taken a lot of time off since that fight. I mean, we're talking over a year. So he has not fought since February of 2018. I like his ground game. Although Michael Johnson is clearly a more technical fighter, I have not seen power transfer from lightweight to featherweight. So I am going to say that I think Emmett can hit harder at 145 than Michael Johnson can. You know, nothing about his drop to featherweight has impressed me. You know, so I'm really curious to hear how Michael Johnson beats Josh Emmett, and whether you disagree with me that, you know, Emmett was on a real positive track and then kind of got derailed by a borderline illegal blow in his fight against Jeremy Stephens. But I am going to pick Josh Emmett for the upset here.
Okay, well, first, stylistically, because I just want to get through the technical aspect first. Stylistically, I think it's a good fight for Johnson. The reason I say that is because Johnson's hands are faster. I think the southpaw versus orthodox stance favours Johnson a lot more. That straight left down the pipe with him being the southpaw is a shot that he was landing regularly on Andre Fili. I think Andre Fili is a tough guy to hit and to look good against as well. I'm not saying that Johnson looked spectacular against him, but the fact that he went to a close 3-round decision tells me that Johnson's on a level that I'm happy with anyway. I really rate Andre Fili. I know some people don't, but I do. Now, the difference is Andre Fili offers a different attack to Josh Emmett because he's got hands and he's got kicks. Whereas although Emmett does use his kicks, I'm not saying he doesn't. He predominantly goes in with his hands and looking to get the knockout blow. So now Michael Johnson's really only got to on the feet. He's only really got to worry about a sort of more of a boxing fight than a kickboxing fight that he had with Andre Fili. And I think that's where his bread and butter is, because the reads he makes inside the cage are really good. And I know his speed is phenomenal, and he's probably one of the faster fighters. He's definitely faster than Josh Emmett, and he can do it going forwards and going backwards, which is key in this fight for reasons that I'm going to mention later on. Now, what I do agree with you, Joe, is I think Emmett does hit harder. But at this stage in the career, I think it's who can get hit the hardest. I think that Michael Johnson will be able to take Emmett's hardest shots, but I'm not convinced that Josh Emmett will be able to take Michael Johnson's hardest shots. Now, the other thing that I disagree with you with what you've said is that his power hasn't, Michael Johnson's power hasn't translated down into featherweight. Man, he was knocking Darren Elkins all over. He had him dropped, he had him hurt in round 1. And, it's unfortunate the way round 2 ended. He got taken down and he gave his back and he got choked. It happens. But, man, he was knocking Darren Elkins all over, who is as tough as nails. Then you look at the Artem Lobov fight. He wobbled Artem Lobov in round 1. He dropped him again later in the fight as well. And, we can all sit back and say, oh, well, that's Artem Lobov. You can say what you like about Artem Lobov, but the one thing you cannot take away from that guy is how fucking tough he is. I'm gonna give you 3 scenarios now, and 2 fighters, and I want you to name one fight. That's it, no explanation. So, who can take the hardest punch in 2019? Artem Lobov or Josh Emmett?
Well, in 2019, okay. I know you're not looking for any narrative here, so just because he hasn't fought, I'm gonna have to go with Lobov, just because Emmett has not fought.
Okay. Whose chin can take the most damage in 2019? Darren Elkins or Josh Emmett?
Oh, Darren Elkins is a freak, so I would definitely say Darren Elkins.
Who can get hit harder, Justin Gaethje or Josh Emmett?
Gaethje.
Gaethje was nearly finished in round 1. If it wasn't for the fact he's a fucking zombie and Michael Johnson put his whole life into trying finishing him, he would have, if that was any other fighter, he'd have finished it. Darren Elkins knocking him all over. Lobov dropped him, wobbled him. We've not really seen Lobov in that sort of trouble. Man, I'm telling you, that knockout that Josh Emmett suffered, I'm not one to sit here and start playing, Twitter doctors and MMA doctors and stuff. So do you know what I did? Fortunately, in my networks in MMA, I have various contacts, and one of the contacts I've got is a doctor. And the doctor has dedicated his entire life to sports science. And, he's a guy that I went to, and I didn't explain the story in my own words. What I did is I sent him over the article on MMA fighting, where Emmett was detailing, his injuries, his surgeries, and exactly what needed to be done, because there was a lot of complex surgeries and things that was wrong with him that I didn't understand. And I just asked the doctor's opinion. And the doctor, I'm not going to name him, but his concerns were pretty much exactly the same as mine. Surprised he's getting into the cage again. The fact that he's guaranteed to not look like the same guy ever again because of the how bad his injuries were. And then he also said in his words, and if the mental game isn't there, this is all but lost. So, man, this is not stuff that I'm creating narratives for. This is what a doctor has told me. So you've got to think, man, that if MJ's landing hard shots on Emmett, I don't know, I just don't see him being able to take the hard shots. But let's say, for the sake of this breakdown, that he can take the hard shots. Is his confidence going to be there mentally? I saw an interview with Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis was talking about how he felt invincible until he got beat by RDA. That was the first fight he really got beaten up, needed stitches, etc. And even just before his Stephen Thompson fight last weekend, 3 years on, he was saying that his confidence is nearly back, he's nearly over what happened with RDA. That was 3 years down the line, and that was nothing to what Emmett got dealt with against Jeremy Stephens. It was horrific, man. Now, the reason I've gone on a little longer in this breakdown, I've bet Michael Johnson is my free play of this weekend. I've got 2.5 units on him at -110. I think the line should be close to -150 in this fight. And man, I honestly, I think in some way that knockout that Josh Emmett suffered is going to play a part in this fight. Add it to the stylistic fight of Michael Johnson having quick hands, quick counters. And the reason I mentioned that it's important that he can fight moving forwards and backwards is because if Emmett does come forwards, if he does gain some confidence back, Michael Johnson can deal with that. He can fight backwards. But predominantly, if he starts landing and Emmett starts going on the back foot, he's good going forwards as well. I like Michael Johnson in this fight, man. I hope it doesn't end up in another brutal knockout, because I don't want to see that happen to Josh Emmett after he's come back off a previous brutal knockout. But I think that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to see Michael Johnson knock Josh Emmett out. Got Michael Johnson to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. Now, in the next fight of the night, we've got David Branch versus Jack Hermansson. Joe, who have you got?
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting fight because it's lined very close. I think at last glance, Hermansson is -125 and David Branch is +105. So it's very close. And when I initially looked at this, I thought, okay, MMA math, we all know, doesn't work. It doesn't work more often than it works. So we got a relatively recent current opponent that both these fighters faced in Santos. And, I was actually at the fight in Atlantic City where David Branch kind of surprised everybody and just planted Santos. And obviously Hermansson lost just as quickly to Santos. So, that's an interesting narrative. Now, Hermansson looked great against Meerschaert in his last fight, and he's a very tough fighter. I've actually, grown to be a big fan of his. That fight he had against, I guess it was Laties, where, he could barely walk. That was the fight, right, where he couldn't stand up.
He injured his knee, yeah.
He injured his knee, and he was in such pain, and he came back and he won that fight. That was absolutely amazing. In my opinion, one of the best and most impressive performances of the year. And then he kind of went on to destroy Meerschaert. Now, my only issue is quality of competition. I mean, Branch is an older fighter, 27 fights. He's 37 years old. Again, he did starch Santos, but then he came back and he lost to, a very new and improved Gerard Cannonier. He was as a big favorite in that fight. He was a -300 favorite in that fight, and Cannonier came back and looked really good at middleweight. So I'm having a real tough time with this fight, Newsome. My initial lean was to Branch. I've been going back and forth. This is a fight that, if I know we're not talking DraftKings here, this is a fight where I would have like almost an equal weight of both fighters, which is not going to help you if you're looking to actually make a straight bet. There is slight odds value in David Branch, so if you pin me down and make me give you a winner here, I'm going to go with David Branch. It's not a super confident pick. Hermansson, I like him a lot. I think he could win the fight, but I'm going to go with the veteran and David Branch here. I know you're going the other way, aren't you?
Yeah. How did you know that?
I had a feeling.
Yeah. I like Jack Hermansson. I'm a big fan of his. Obviously, being a fan doesn't win you money though, so obviously you do have to rein that in a little bit. I like what Jack Hermansson does in the cage. He's strong, he's tough, he's gritty. And you know what? If you do bet Jack Hermansson in this fight, the one thing I can guarantee is he will fight for your money. Like you've already mentioned, the Tarley's Laties fight. I had a 4-unit bet on Jack Hermansson in that fight. And actually, my friend knocked on my door at sort of halfway through round 2. And he came in, he was like, oh shit, I've missed the start of this fight, who's winning? And I was just like, don't talk to me, and somehow managed to get Tarley's Laties on his back, reversed, mounted, and then started landing some brutal ground and pound with the messed up knee. It was that bad that Goddard actually went over halfway through, not halfway through, in between rounds, and just said, look, ask your fighter if he's okay. I've heard him cry out a couple of times. Make sure he's okay. It was that bad, and to then actually finish Laties as well in a fight that he was definitely losing. Unbelievable. The dude will fight for your money. The one concern that I do have in this fight, though, is David Branch can throw up that veteran grind. And I'll give you an example from another fighter. When Beneil Dariush fought Thiago Moises, I bet Moises in that fight, and he just got close. The distance got closed straight away every time. Beneil Dariush clinched up. He threw him to the mat. He was laying on him, and David Branch could do that. He could pull off that type of performance where he just uses his brute strength and his veteran experience to grind out a win. But I don't think he can do it for 3 rounds. We saw Thales Laties try and bully Hermansson after that early onslaught from Hermansson in round 1 and try and take him to the mat. And actually, Hermansson's got some decent trips with the whizzer and decent defense mechanisms in his wrestling defense, which ultimately allows him to get topside himself. So I do like that side of him. Striking, I think he's a better striker than Branch. I think he hits harder. I think his movement in and out of the ranges really well. He's aggressive. He's in your face. I'm not putting too much stock into that knockout from David Branch of Jared Cannonier. I think it was just another knockout, not like the one we've just spoken about with Josh Emmett, which could potentially be career changing. So I don't really put too much stock into it, but I do feel that outside of an ugly, gritty, horrible grind from Dave Branch, I do see Hermansson winning anywhere else the fight goes. So if the fight goes to the mat and Hermansson's on bottom, I think he can get back up to his feet or sweep. He was doing it against Laties, who is a world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist. So I've got no doubts that he'd be able to have some success against Dave Branch in that aspect. And like I say, on the feet, I think he's too quick. I think he's too powerful. Ultimately, I think what happens is I think Jack Hermansson is going to want to nullify any potential grind that happens or that could happen from Branch. And by doing that, you put Branch on his back. Because Branch has got advantages in this fight too. He's got strengths in this fight where in different places it can go. But I think where the fight is most efficient for Branch is on his back. I think Jack Hermansson has got a crushing top game. He's self-proclaimed the greatest or the hardest or the most brutal, however he words it, ground and pound in MMA. I think there's a few fighters that would have something to say about that, but ultimately I don't think he's got a bad shout from what we've seen of the dude. So Hermansson's going to be best in this fight on top, and Hermansson's going to know that Branch is going to be worse in this fight from bottom. You put 2 and 2 together, Joe, and what do you get? You get
in the US, you get 4.
So yeah, I like Jack Hermansson in this fight. I think he's got multiple avenues to victory. Branch has got the one ugly, gritty, grindy path to victory that I'm not sure he'd be able to get away with for 15 minutes. I think Hermansson gets Branch down at some point in this fight, and with a bit of time, I think he works on top, and I think he gets some ground and pound off, and I think he'll finish Branch on the mat. So I've got Jack Hermansson to win, and I've got him to win via knockout. Now, the main event of the evening, the violent one. We've got Edson Barboza versus Justin Gaethje. Joe, who have you got?
Okay, so look, this is about as good, at least compared to recency bias. This is about as good of a matchup as Edson Barboza can get. He's got a guy that is not going to try to take him down, which is clearly Edson Barboza's kryptonite. And I'm going to assume that Gaethje is not going to change his style of fighting because he hasn't in the past, used his wrestling in the least. I've gotten 3 out of the 4 Gaethje fights right. I had him against Michael Johnson. I bet on him against Alvarez. I had Poirier against him, and I had him big time to beat Michael Vick. So
Michael Vick.
I'm sorry, James Vick. Michael Vick. No, Michael Vick is obviously is an American football player. So I had Gaethje. I got him right 3 out of 4 times. I was on Barboza big time against Dan Hooker. That was just a life-altering beatdown that Hooker took in that fight. We can argue. This is going to segue perfectly into our post-fight breakdown topics. That was a fight where, Hooker's Corner should have thrown the towel in earlier. In any case, I love the stylistic matchup for Barboza here. Gaethje is going to come at him and get it. Not to say that he doesn't have a puncher's chance. I could just see Barboza using his vicious kicks to keep Gaethje at bay. Okay, let's get my voice working here. And just kind of, it's unfortunately it's going to be another knockout victory for, I say unfortunately, I like Barboza and I'm probably going to be betting him here, but I don't want to see any fighter get hurt, and especially a high-action fighter like Gaethje. I want to see him fight more. I don't know how many more fights he actually has unless he dramatically changes his style of fighting, which seems unlikely. But I like Barboza here in a pretty major way.
I think Justin Gaethje said before the James Vick fight he had 5 left. So
okay,
we'll see. But I agree, man. I think Barboza's going to get the win as well. It's always tough to pick or bet against Justin Gaethje because he is a zombie. But man, I just feel there's a couple of ways that Barboza can win this fight, and there's definitely a way that Gaethje can win it. I mean, from Gaethje's point of view, if he gets Barboza on the back foot constantly, closes that distance into boxing range, that's absolutely his best chance to win because you're taking out Barboza's biggest attack, which is obviously his kicks. Now, if this fight gets into a leg kicking battle, which, listen, it could, Barboza finishes fights with brutal kicks. Gaethje finishes fights with low leg kicks as well. You know what? If somebody said to me, if this fight plays out and not a single punch or takedown or clinch is thrown or attempted in this fight, and it's just leg kicks, would you take that? Absolutely. I would take a leg kick battle all day long to see which one comes out on top. And, ultimately in that scenario, I think Barboza would win, man. His kicks are just too brutal. But what I see happening in this fight is I see early on Gaethje having a lot of success, coming forward, closing that distance. Like I said, that's his path to victory, and starting to get shots off on Barboza. Now, what Barboza can do in this scenario is he can gauge when Gaethje's coming in a little bit too much, and then he can throw like a jump knee or something like that. Start timing that to just make Gaethje think twice about closing the distance, and maybe closing the distance with any sort of speed about it. So there's definitely tools that Barboza can do to nullify that, but I think early on Gaethje will have some success. Now, the more success Gaethje has early on, the more tired he'll become later down the line, and this is where I think Barboza will really start to turn it on Gaethje, because when Gaethje's coming forward, if Barboza throws a jab or a 1-2, Gaethje covers very obviously to his head and his chin, so he really gets his guard high, and what that'll allow Barboza to do is start firing that kick to the body of Gaethje, really starting to break him down. At this point, either Gaethje will try and take these body kicks and eventually crumble, which he will. He's a human being, and he's not going to take many of those clean body kicks to put a human down, even humans as tough as Justin Gaethje. Or Gaethje will start blocking to the body, which I think he will start to do. Once that happens, Barboza has got a crazy fast spin wheel kick to the head. We saw it against Kevin Lee, made him do the chicken dance, and this was in a fight where Kevin Lee absolutely battered Barboza for about 3 or 4 rounds, and then Barboza, tired, beaten up, bloody, still managed to pull off that quick spin wheel kick to the head of Lee, which was blocked, by the way, and it still made him do the chicken dance. So I think even if Gaethje's tired and Barboza's throwing these kicks to the head, it doesn't matter if Gaethje's blocking him or not. I think he's going to get knocked out. I think there's going to be a combination of either body head or just go to the head through the guard and knock him out that way. I think Gaethje's going to get knocked out. I think it's going to happen later in the fight after he's already had some success. I'm going Edson Barboza to win. I'm going to take him to win by a knockout. And that's all she wrote for the fight breakdowns, guys. But we move on, and welcome to the hot topics portion. The first thing I'd like to kick this off with is a topic that may come as a surprise to some listeners, but It's certainly no surprise to me, and I want to talk about Nigerian MMA. Now, like I say, it's probably sounding crazy right now. Like, why are you talking about Nigerian MMA? Well, I'll give you a few reasons why. Kennedy Nzechukwu, Sodiq Yusuff, Israel Adesanya, Kamaru Usman, even Kamaru Usman's brother Muhammad Usman is now on the radar. Nigerian MMA is looking so good right now. Spoiler alert: I think Israel Adesanya will probably be Kelvin Gastelum. So we could end up having another Nigerian champion. Kamaru Usman's just won the welterweight championship from Tyron Woodley. So by the time UFC 236 is finished, we could potentially have 2 Nigerian champions in the UFC, which is just crazy to think about. It's like they've just blossomed out of nowhere. Sodiq Yusuff, I've already discussed in this podcast. I think that guy's ceiling's really high. I think he's explosive, he's exciting. The development's going to be there for him as well. Kennedy, I've already mentioned, Fortis MMA. He could still be a bit raw, a bit green, but man, 26-year-old, 6-0, at a great camp. The developments, improvements are definitely going to be there with him. And you know, we'll see what we get from Muhammad Usman as well. So, Joe, what's your thoughts on Nigerian MMA? I know you said off air you didn't really have too much to talk about, but just based on the names that I've just given to you, have you got any thoughts?
Well, I mean, obviously Usman is you know, relative to recency bias and his performance and total domination of Woodley. Now it's a bit controversial, probably, but I am not as sold on, and never have been, on Adesanya as of yet. Now, and you know, sneak preview here, I'm picking Gastelum against him.
Interesting.
But be that what it may, it's still a great endorsement of, you know, the African continent as a producer of fighters, and even branching away from Nigeria. I mean, you know, there's such a high level of athleticism, you know, to draw from, you know, and we're starting to see it like in other places, obviously, with some of the Chinese fighters coming out of Asia. But, you know, we've seen, you know, African continent athletes, you know, shine in other sports, what you would call football over there in the UK, you know, what I would call soccer. You know, we've seen a number of you know, athletes from Africa, you know, do very well. And now we're kind of starting to see it in fighting in MMA. So, yeah, I mean, I'd love to see what Usman's brothers got, you know, by way of a fight game. But yeah, it's very encouraging. You know, you've got some fighters who are making their you know, their appearances in the UFC. I'm very anxious to see how this Kennedy kid looks on Saturday. You know, we'll see if he's ready, and if he does get a win, what's next for him. So yeah, I'm on board with you. I'm excited about you know, fighters and athletes in general coming out of the African continent.
Yeah, and you know, you just mentioned a good point with Kennedy there as well. If Kennedy comes out on Saturday night, you know, and absolutely puts on a stellar performance against Paul Craig, I'll be sold, man. I really will. And then that'd be Kennedy, Sodiq, Adesanya, Kamaru Usman. That'd be them be 4 solid Nigerian fighters. And like I say, Muhammad Usman, I think, is 4-1 at the minute. I think he won either last weekend or the weekend before that. So, you know, he's definitely going to be one to watch for, especially with that Usman name, especially now his brother is a world champion in UFC. It's gonna give him a path to the big show for sure. So, man, I know it's strange we're talking about Nigerian MMA, but man, they're flourishing right now, and I can't wait to see what the fighters that I've listed bring to the table in the future. They're all really young as well, which is, well, young in the fight game for some of them, young in actual age for others, but they've all got so many years in front of them. It's really exciting to see what they're going to bring to the table. And then the next thing we're going to talk about, and this is one that you were happy to discuss as well, Joe, you know, talking about injuries, you know, damages suffered inside the cage, layoffs, you know, talk to me, man.
Okay, so if you give me a little bit of latitude here, I'm a numbers guy in the sense that I see how everything relates to money and to the almighty dollar or pound or euro, whatever currency you live and survive with. And, as it relates to MMA, it's unfortunate, but it's a fact that, these fighters relative to, let's say, boxing are dramatically underpaid. I mean, and just looking at the main event, if you look at Justin Gaethje, for that, fight of the year candidate against Dustin Poirier, his base for that fight, he made $110,000. Okay. And he got a $50,000 performance of the night bonus. Now, I'm not trying to make light of the value of $110,000. I'm sure that there are a lot of people, or the vast majority of people, who would be thrilled with making $110,000. But, once you kind of drill down and look at not only the damage that these fighters are taking, but the expenses that they have to pay for their training. There's managers, there's trainers, there's taxes. You can't avoid the tax man. So he got $110,000, and then he got another $50,000 for, fight of the night bonus. So just a tad under 50% of his base fight pay, that he got in the form of a bonus. So that encourages these fighters to pursue fighting techniques that, are going to get them the opportunity to earn these bonuses. And, a fighter like Gaethje, we talked about it, he thought he had maybe 5 fights left. And I think we can both agree, if he was a fighter that relied more on his wrestling, he would probably have an extended career. I mean, look at guys, or look at guys like the boa constrictor, Alessio Lonek, who has had a lot of fights. And sure, he's taken some damage, but, he's a guy that uses grappling, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. He is not a guy that is going to stand in the pocket and trade with you. He's not that kind of fighter, right? But unfortunately, that seems to be the type of fight or fighter that the UFC rewards, vis-a-vis these bonuses. And given, the fact that these guys earn, and we're not like, look, there's obviously anomalies. Like, we're not talking a Conor McGregor here, who earns $3 million a fight. The vast majority of the fighters are not super highly compensated, considering the damage that they take and the long-term effects of that damage. Remember, like, boxers use gloves, and I'm not saying that boxers don't take damage, but their gloves are a lot different than the gloves that MMA fighters use, right? The weight of the gloves alone, right? There's a bit more cushion in boxing gloves versus MMA gloves. And the amount of pure damage that a fighter, an MMA fighter, can take in a fight is extremely excessive, relative to almost any other athlete or sport, that's currently out there in the market. So, I think it's, part of it is the desire to put on an exciting fight and get that additional compensation that you need. You're not only fighting for yourself, you're fighting for your family. There are people who rely on you. And because you're looking to make that fight exciting, it usually means striking, right? Not always. I mean, obviously there's a Khabib who is this super dominant wrestler, that people are enamored with, that, wins bonuses and gets compensated based on his wrestling. But for every Khabib, there's like a dozen strikers out there who look to kind of go and if you look at how performance bonuses are paid, more often than not, it's a knockout. It's a striking affair. Obviously, you can make cases where there were bonuses that were paid based on non-striking type of fights, but those seem to be the fights that people remember, the exciting fights. So, unless there's a dramatic change in how fighters are compensated, unfortunately, I think you're going to continue to see, this long-term damage, that these fighters are taking. And you could see when they decline, when they fall off that proverbial cliff. And, which is why I don't want to see a guy like Ross Pearson, take a lot more damage, because he's that kind of prototypical, exchange fighter, that's going to take, a lot of damage in his fights. And yeah, he's going to win some, he's going to lose some. But when he wins, is he really winning? I mean, that's the way I look at it. Yes, he's winning the fight, but the damage that these guys are taking, in the long run, is not going to be good for their overall health. So, look, I'm an advocate of more fighter pay. I think higher fighter pay might change the way some of these fighters look to fight, and not have to always worry about chasing these bonuses all the time. But I'm interested in your thoughts on this as well.
Well, first and foremost, would you then not argue that if you're on £100,000 pay for your fight, would you then not argue that it's better to put on a safer performance and not get the bonuses, but then have £100,000 more often? Because obviously, you've said that you think the career will be extended if you're not taking so much damage, which I agree with. So there's got to be some give in that respect, because if you're willing to not get the bonuses, you can extend your career. Extending your career means more fights. More fights means more of your base pay, which, like I said in this example, is 100k. So there has to come a point where you think, actually, is it worth taking the damage and, just play it safe? Make sure I keep getting the wins. That first and foremost, you need to keep winning, because if not, you'll just get caught, and then therefore it would have been worth taking that, that damage and getting the 50k. So, I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, again, I think that we live in a very gimme now type of society where, and again, there are fighters who make a lot less than, $100,000 or 100,000 pounds, per fight. But I think part of it is fighting careers are so short that, even, quote unquote, playing it safe, you can still get hurt, right? Like you can still get caught with something. You can still have an injury that sidelines you for a year. You can actually have an injury in training that's completely unrelated to, time in the octagon that, has you sidelined for a year or more. So I think it's hard for a fighter to look at, his career trajectory that way and think, okay, well, maybe I'm at 100,000 per fight now. And what did you do to work up to that, right? You perhaps have taken some damage to get to that point. Now I'm going to play it safe. It's hard to think that way simply because, you really don't know. Like, you don't know, am I going to get into a training? Am I going to have a training injury that's going to put me out for a year and a half? And I could have really been aggressive in that last fight I had and won $50,000 or 50,000 pounds. And that really would have gone a long way towards helping me ride out this period of inactivity. So I think there's, plus, you're really at the beck and call of the UFC as to when you're going to actually fight. That's another thing. Like, you don't really control your own destiny in terms of how often you fight. Like, you can say, I want to fight 3-4 times a year. It's really up to the UFC to put you into those fights, to book those fights. And part of it is, if you do have a play it safe performance, you're less likely to get that call to fight, that third or fourth time. I mean, look how frequently Johnny Walker has been fighting, and that's because his fights are exciting. I mean, we can argue that he's done more damage to himself in the octagon than any of his opponents have done to him. Which is, if you watch this last fight, you'll know what we're talking about. But he's a guy that I can't imagine the UFC is not looking to rebook right away. Like, he's one of these exciting fighters. He's a finisher. He goes all out for it, right? So, when you're at the whim of an organization, to essentially get fed, that's got to play on your psyche as well. Like, yeah, I could play it safe. I can make my 100,000. But am I going to get that call, by the UFC? Yeah, maybe they'll let me fight twice a year, but I really need to fight 3 or 4 times a year to make the living that I want to make. And my career is short enough, So, yeah, I mean, I think that would be a smart way to play it. But can you actually play it that way?
Well, just moving on to my thoughts on on the whole pay thing, because it seems that we've digressed onto that a little bit. First and foremost, I think that MMA fighters are massively underpaid. I don't think that's a secret. We see football players, you'd call it soccer over there. We see football players on sort of like £200,000 a week. Some of these fighters don't get paid that in a lifetime. There's so many fighters, even at the UFC level, that have a second job, a second form of income, because they can't afford to live on the fight wage with the UFC. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs on the finances and what they have coming in and what they can budget to go out for wages and expenses and things like that. I'm not going to pretend to know, but it's horrible to see a fighter that's or a sports person, should I say, that's found the way to the top, to the top of where they could be, to the pinnacle, which in MMA is the UFC, and still have to have a second job, a second form of income. It is really sad to see. So I do think they are.
Would it surprise you, Newsome? Would it surprise you if I told you that Jessica Andrade, one of the most exciting and dominant fighters at 115, has to actually bake goods at home and brings them in at the gym to sell so that she could, cover training expenses? Would that surprise you? I mean, sad
the way you've put
is
that?
that?
No.
I mean, but how sad is that? That, a fighter at her level, an elite level fighter that's an action fighter that, let's be honest, like is one of the few female fighters, that you're really going to always get an action fight from, right? Like she's always going to go out there and look to destroy her opponent, right? And she is taken to having to sell baked goods at her gym so she can raise money for training. That is actually sad and makes me angry.
Yeah,
that you can't pay a fighter enough so that she doesn't have to sell baked goods. And I mean, there was also I believe Carla Esparza, who won one of the Ultimate Fighters.
I know what you're about to say.
I believe had to sell her motorcycle that she got, her Harley, right? Because she couldn't cover her expenses. So I mean, when you got stuff like that, it's like, man, okay, like you're making money hand over fist, right? Like apparently the Fertittas treated the fighters better, but I mean that all goes towards what the fighter is actually putting on the line, and that kind of segues back to our main topic. I mean, the long-term damage that these guys and gals are subjecting themselves to, to kind of make a living. There has to be a balance. There's no retirement program. Like, most other major sports, even golf, have a very substantial, retirement program. There's no retirement program set up for UFC fighters. So, like, if you play 3 years in Major League Baseball or football,
they do tend to go into, a bit of coaching or help or working for other promotions and gaining a wage that way. But I can't imagine that that's going to be any more lucrative in regards to a paycheck as what it would be to be the fighter. So yeah, I agree. There's a lot of sad scenarios, and unfortunately it is what it is. But the best thing that we can do is just keep trying to help the sport grow as best that we can as fans, and hope that the sport grows because of the promotions and the fighters, and one day be in a place where a fighter doesn't have to have a second job. But
no, I'd love to see them put aside a small amount of money. It doesn't have to be a lot, but a small amount of money into a fund that, fighters can draw on, after they've, participated in so many fights, that they could draw on for like medical costs that they're going to, incur as they get older, some form of pension plan. It wouldn't take that much, honestly, to put a little bit aside of the revenue that they're getting, for the fighters. And they're one of the only sports right now that doesn't do that, that doesn't have a pension plan, that doesn't have like a deferred medical plan of some sort. Every other major sport, from soccer to golf, to hockey, to baseball, to football, they all have these types of plans in place for, their athletes who, participate a certain number of times, in the sport. So I would love to see something like that happen that helps these fighters out in the long term.
I agree, and especially with MMA potentially being one of the more dangerous sports on the planet, for sure.
Yep, absolutely.
So we move on to our last hot topic, and as always, we're going to discuss the potential fights that could earn a fight of the night and performance of the night bonus. So, Joe, you're the guest.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad. I feel bad you giving me first crack here because you probably know which way I'm going to go. I'll let you be the one who kind of goes out on a limb and picks something not obvious. I'm obviously going with the main event here. I don't always look forward to the main events, but this has fireworks written all over it. So it's hard for me to sway from Gaethje, Barboza, and that's what I think is going to be fight of the night and, performance of the night.
So you think it's going to be a double in there? You think it's going to be a fight of the night?
I think so. I think I'm gonna go out on, well, maybe it'll be a small lamp that I go out on and say that it's going to be fight of the night and Barboza is going to get performance of the night.
And who's going to get the other performance of the night?
I will go out other performance of the night. Okay, that's a good one. So one more performance of the night bonus. I am going to say that the winner of the Branch Hermansson fight gets the other bonus.
Okay, well, it's sort of similar to where I'm going. Obviously, the fight of the night is going to be Barboza and Justin Gaethje. I don't see it not getting it. The performance of the night bonuses, I think Jack Hermansson will get a performance of the night, and I also think Sodiq Yusuff will get a performance of the night as well. It's a bit of a shame with that Sodiq Yusuff and Sheymon Moraes fight, because if it wasn't for how violent Barboza and Gaethje is, I think Moraes and Yusuff would be a front runner for fight of the night for sure.
Agreed.
But I think that fight will be fireworks enough that someone will get finished. I think it'll be Moraes that gets finished, and therefore I think the UFC will be able to justify giving Sodiq the 50k. And that's it for this week's podcast, guys. So, Joe, before we hit the Newsome MMA mentions, what have you got to mention, man? Tell people where to find you, what you do, and anything you need to talk about.
Well, I am pretty exclusive to Twitter. I am at Suntszu, SUNTSZU. I will have my 2 pods out this week. My Creating Alpha pod, which is not a fight-by-fight breakdown pod, but is always seems to be well received. We've had Mr. Newsome on as a guest on that pod before, and then I will be doing my pod for RotoWire with the real Chris Olsen and the DFS Sniper. At 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the U.S. on Friday, and that is a full card breakdown pod. So I've got that going on, and then just life in general, my friend.
Awesome. Now for the quick Newsome MMA mentions. First of all, I'd like to reiterate the premium bets offer from Newsome MMA that is running up until the start of UFC 236. Anybody who purchases the silver membership, which is a 6-month membership, will receive the premium bets for the rest of 2019. And like I've already mathematically broken down, that's $33 per month if you're from the US, £25 per month if you're from the UK, and €28 per month if you're from anywhere else in Europe. And let's just say again that we've got 3 fight cards on average per month. That's $11 per card in the US, £8 per card in the UK, and €9 per card anywhere else in Europe. It's a very good offer and one that costs less than your mobile phone bill. There's also a competition that I'm running over on Twitter to win a free silver membership with Newsome MMA, so go and check that out at Newsome_MMA, which is the Twitter handle. The next mention is a long-term sponsor of Newsome MMA, which is CBD Life UK. CBD is an amazing product and something that I use myself. Thousands of professional athletes also use CBD too, and at CBD Life UK they've got a wide variety of products to suit the needs of any customer. You can go to cbdlifeuk.com and use promo code Newsome MMA to also get 15% off your order. And that's it from us, guys. There's now a 1-week break before the next fight card, so enjoy the fights on Saturday night, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.